I was gonna say one of the other cool things, the features that really sold me on Sevr, even before I started working for Sevr, was the practice log.
You
So
read my mind. I was just about to say that.
I was gonna say, man, this thing right here, when we were talking about confidence, I mean, in my opinion, that's better than a new bow, better than a new set of arrows, anything like that. It's just having confidence in your equipment. And the fact that you can take this broadhead, this exact one you're gonna put in your quiver, put a set screw through it, and you can shoot this into a target without
Mm-hmm.
it expanding. Uh, Man, the confidence going into the season, especially making like that 70-yard shot I did on that deer, I knew 100% without a doubt that was going to hit behind my pin because I had been practicing at 70 yards with my broadheads going into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no question in my mind when I'm drawing back on something. Same kind of thing with my elk. I had a really narrow window for a frontal shot at 30 yards on an elk this year. And while I was at full draw, I was like, I know I can make this shot. And so I just
Mm-hmm.
centered that pin just like I would on a target, ripped through it, and it hit right where I wanted it to, just because I knew 100% that it was going to do that.
Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today we have Casey from Sevr. Now, Sevr is an outstanding broadhead in so many facets. It originally was the Ulmer head. The Ulmer, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was the Ulmer. It was owned by the Ulmers, and they're well known in the archery industry. Easton bought it, and then Sevr has become what it is from that. I've run some Sevrs. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to put any through an animal yet to be able to give you a good review, but I do love the way they fly. I love the concept behind the hybrid Sevr, the hybrid 1.5, which gives you close to a 2.2 inch total cut. I'm a big proponent of hybrid style mechanical broadhead, so that if, heaven forbid, the mechanical portion of the broadhead does happen to fail, you're still getting a decent cut with the hybrid portion of the head. And honestly, the hybrid heads that I've shot have been phenomenal. So I can only assume that when I do get the opportunity, hopefully this year with some hogs or whitetails, to test out some different broadheads than I did last year, then this Sevr will get put through an animal and we'll be able to give you some feedback on that. But before we get into this podcast with Casey and Sevr, I do want to say thank you so much to you guys out there for supporting the show. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Remember that every week for the foreseeable future, I will be reading a review, sometimes at the end of the podcast, sometimes in the middle of the podcast, to let you know that I appreciate your support. I do read all the reviews that come in, and I want to get you guys some swag. Sometimes it'll be first Phorm product, it'll be a shirt, hat, something along those lines, but I'll read it here. Then you reach out to me via email if it was yours that was read, and we'll get you hooked up with something to show my appreciation. On top of that, partners of the show. First Phorm is one of those partners, along with BlackOvis, Ollin Digiscoping, Canvas Cutter, and so many more. Guys, thank you for the support. I have partners that can provide you discounts if you're in the market for gear. I highly recommend that you go and check out the links down below. In every episode, you can go and check out those links, get the best pricing possible on the gear that I use and that I trust. You'll be supporting the partners of the show. You're supporting me and my family, and I'm happy to provide the discount back to you guys so you can get the best gear at the best price for you. So as you're swinging through, grabbing gear, right now is the best time to get gear and start testing it for your spring hunts, your summer camping, and your fall hunts. Go and check out the discounts down below. Thank you so much for the support, guys. Now let's get into this conversation with Casey from Sevr. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today we have an awesome guest for you guys. You've probably heard of Sevr and all the things that they've been doing. They've had their 2-inch out for a while. They've got crossbow heads out as well, and they launched the 1.5 hybrid last year, and we're going to get into a little bit more on the technology behind the 1.5 hybrid and other things that they may or may not be coming out with this year. If you guys follow my buddy Jared, you'll know that there's some stuff in the works with Sevr, and you might get a little glimpse of that today. We'll see. We'll tease you with that a little bit. But with that, before we get into all the cool stuff and the gear and everything, I want you guys to get to know Casey a little bit. Casey and I met, I think the first time we officially met was at TAC last year. Yeah. And Casey since has taken over. What is your role at Sevr, I guess? Marketing?
Yeah. It's kind of it's kind of a weird role. I'm technically the only dedicated Sevr employee as of right now. So Sevr's owned by Easton Archery, so I get paid by Easton. I sit in the Easton building. But they never really had anybody that focused on it. I know Clint, I imagine you guys have heard of Clint Warner. He was the kind of the engineer behind it. He put some effort behind it, but he obviously got pulled back to Easton to work on
Mhm.
arrow projects and stuff like that. So it was always a side thought for Easton. And it's impressive with how far Sevr came without having anybody having a sole focus on it. And so they was just at the point in the company where they were like, we just need somebody to just worry about Sevr, focus on Sevr. That's the only thing they worry about. So that's where Tyson hired me for, was to come in and just kind of fan the flame. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And for people that don't know, Tyson's the kind of the lead guy over there at Easton.
yeah,
You've probably seen him on a lot of MFJJ videos, elk shape videos. I'm just trying to think of what audiences kind of cross over with mine. But yeah, Tyson's an awesome guy over there at Easton. He's very observant and detail oriented as well. I've learned over the last 2 years of just knowing who he was or who he is. But anyway, so that's awesome. So the one Sevr employee, Casey, the one and only, and so with that, I guess Casey, kind of give us a little bit of backstory, who you are, and why you love archery so much that you made the mistake of starting to work in the industry. So now you don't ever get to shoot your bow or hunt. You know,
exactly. That's what it feels like. No, it always grew up in like a hunting family. Like my grandpa and my dad were big influences on that, but we were traditionally rifle hunters and rifle deer hunters, and that was really all we did. You know, that was the 1 week of the year we looked forward to every year. And as a kid, that was like my Christmas. But as I got older and got a vehicle and got more money, I started kind of exploring different avenues of hunting. And so I had buddies that bow hunted through high school, and I'd go with them. I never had enough money to purchase a bow on my own, but I would go follow along and see the amount of deer they were seeing. And I was just like, man, when I get enough, I want to kind of adventure into this. And started working at Shields right out of high school. So I just part-time job. I was like, this will just be something to kind of get me by until I figure out what I'm
I'll
going to do.
just say this, guys. He says Shields, not Shields, like with a D. There's so how many people come in to Shields and they're like, yeah, I heard about Shields from so and so. You know, I hear it all the time.
In the first couple of years of them being open, when I first started working there, it was all the time. And then as it kind of got more popular, it started to kind of become more of a household name here in Utah. But yeah, I started working for them part-time, and it was just in their hunting department. And Dustin Whitwer was managing the archery shop back then. I think he runs the Huntian podcast now. But he kind of took me under his wing, my little dumb 18-year-old self, and saw that I was excited about archery and really fueled that and taught me the right ways off the bat. And that's what grew that addiction. I bought my first bow that year, fell in love with it, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, I was the full-time bow tech at Shields, and then I ran the archery shop for 5 years, and so I was just like fully invested at that point and had really no chance of looking back. And I always knew I wanted to work in the industry just because I love it so much, and the people, and it's a small world. Like you meet somebody here and they're going to know somebody that's across the country, and you happen to, make a connection there. But I knew I wanted to be in it, and it's where I belonged. And so I always kind of bugged Tyson. I was just like, if there's ever something that comes up, just let me know, Easton or Sevr. We had Delta McKenzie at the time too. I was like, if there's anything that you need help with, I'd be happy to come join your team. And he called me last year and was like, hey, I think I've got something for you. And so he pitched it to me. I went through the interview process, and once I got it, I was stoked. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, you seem, and I can speak just from experience at events that I've seen you at. You're definitely excited about the brand. You're not the guy that's necessarily sitting. You go to trade shows and you can walk around and kind of get a feel for people that are genuinely excited about their brand and the company they work for, because they're not sitting back on their phones in a comfy chair or the uncomfy chairs that they have at shows for the booths, and just like kind of engaging. You were definitely not one of those people. You like to get out and talk to people, and you're in the forefront of just excited about what you're doing, which is cool. And so I mean, I got introduced to Sevr, trying to remember. Man, I feel bad now because he was such a cool dude. Is it Connor?
Connor.
The guy that was here before you. Tall, big old man.
Big boy.
Huge dude. Yeah. And big old teddy bear, because he's really nice dude. And then, you came along and got to know you a little bit. I've unfortunately, we were talking about this beforehand. Didn't really get to put the hybrid through an animal this last year. I'm trying to think. So I put one through a squirrel, which, whatever. That squirrel was gone
Cut
pretty
in half.
much by the time, cut in half pretty much. And then I put one through a tree, so that tree's definitely dead. But outside of that, didn't get to experience it on an animal. But I will say, from my personal experience with them, and I love tinkering and messing around and always testing. I've got my go-tos that are tried and true because I've actually used them on animals and I love what they're doing, and they're always in my quiver. But I like to try new things out every once in a while that pique my interest. And the 2-inch, we were talking about this a little bit for the long range stuff. For me personally, that 2-inch was a little bit too long of a ferrule because the way the blades fold into the ferrule itself. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but for me, I like to shoot out the distance, and I like to shoot my broadheads out to 80 to 100 yards consistently. And the closer you can get to the shaft of that arrow, in my unprofessional opinion, is it less chance of any kind of wobble happening. Not necessarily with your broadhead, but with the components that lead to the broadhead itself.
Correct.
And the least amount of wobble equals straighter arrow flight, which in turn equals more accuracy. And so, I personally, I've shot the 2.0s. They shoot great. They really do. But going back to what I've always said about confidence in your setups, you can have the coolest, shiniest, newest things, but if you're second guessing your shot when you're at full draw on an animal, it's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And so my confidence was definitely, and I'd never messed around with the 1.75s, which you guys offer. And then you came out with the hybrid, and that one I was like, I'm stoked because that's like almost a 2.2-inch cut. It's got little hybrid blades, and you've got one with you if you want to show that up there and talk about it a little bit.
The cool part is it's the same size as the 1.5 ferrule, which is our traditionally most accurate broadhead. So you're not expanding that length out and gaining more drag or more turbulence that could come down the arrow shaft. And so we found that with this, even with adding the bleeder blades on there, these little section that goes across right here, that we're still holding that downrange accuracy out to 100 yards. Our engineers and James Yates played with the placement of this blade quite a bit until they found that where it's at right now, if you can kind of see, it lines up with the deployment arms. And so it doesn't add any extra turbulence or drag to your arrow because it actually works in conjunction with those deployment arms where that blade's at currently.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're still able to see 100 yards accuracy, because that was our engineer's biggest thing when they came out with it. They were like, we don't want to sacrifice what we're known for, which is supreme accuracy. So it took them a few years to get this right, and I'm glad they took a couple years because the product they came out with was absolutely phenomenal. So
yeah, for sure. So let's kind of get a little bit of backstory. I'm gonna test your knowledge here on Sevr because I don't know everything. So Sevr initially was the Ulmer Edge, owned by Randy Ulmer.
And Randy and Rusty. I have to make
Randy
that
and
clear.
Rusty. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So the Ulmer Edge was then bought by Easton.
Yep.
Right. And then became Sevr. So people might be more familiar with the Ulmer Edge if they ever shot one of those back in the day. A lot of people absolutely loved that design. And then, obviously you guys came out with your design. Now, I guess explain. The ferrules are all steel or titanium.
Titanium now. So the Ulmer Edge originally was steel, or steel tip with an aluminum ferrule. And so we found that it just wasn't up to the durability standards here at Easton that we wanted. At least that's what I've heard from Clint. And so that's when they started tinkering with going to a titanium build, just to allow the head to be more durable. I mean, we're getting guys. I was just on the phone with a gentleman this morning, actually, is ordering replacement blades. And he shot 10 plus deer with a single head. He just keeps replacing the blades. And he's like, I love the ferrules because they don't bend. He's like, you can bury them in the dirt. As long as you don't hit a rock, they're going to stay good. And so.
Or donate them to a tree.
Yeah, or donate them to a tree. But, to hear that and hear somebody that's been using one of our products over and over and over again, I mean, that just. It takes that price of it and makes it not as stingy. When you can replace 3 full heads for $17, that's not bad at all. So
exactly, yeah, no, I agree. So again, they're all titanium, which is cool. There's not many like that out on the market. I personally, try and steer people. That's why I shoot 125s, because I like steel or titanium. I'm not a big fan of aluminum. Again, this is getting very nitpicky, but when you're shooting into foam targets, especially bag targets, maybe not so much, but foam targets, and again, confidence in your setup going through an animal, I'm not concerned necessarily with aluminum bending as it's going through an animal personally, but I am concerned about having to constantly spin test my arrows if I've got aluminum components, because going into a bag or into a foam target consistently, and then pulling it out, etc., could cause some bending, which again goes back to the wobble and then bad downrange accuracy in arrow flight. And so I always try and steer towards the aluminum and steel as much as possible. And there's been a lot of really cool options lately with components even that have come out in those two categories that are lighter weight and almost matching aluminum weight, but in a steel or titanium component. So you can keep the same weight, but get a better quality component up front that's not going to bend on you. So that's one thing that's really cool about Sevr, in my opinion, is the titanium. And then the blades are steel, or are they titanium as well?
They are steel, just for the cost of them. If they were titanium, this thing would be like $50. But we get really good quality steel. We have a guy that does a couple extra passing, or I think they call them what do they call that? Stropping passes. I couldn't think of the word there. They do a couple extra stropping passes to make sure we have that dry shave out of the box. That's kind of what our goal is. And so we ensure that. So we do quality checks on every single batch of heads we get in to make sure that they're up to those standards. So
awesome. And
I was gonna say,
go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, one of the other cool things, the features that really sold me on Sevr, even before I started working for Sevr, was the practice log. So
you read my mind. I was just about to say that.
I was gonna say, man, this thing right here. When we were talking about confidence, I mean, in my opinion, that's better than a new bow, better than a new set of arrows, anything like that. It's just having confidence in your equipment, and the fact that you can take this broadhead, this exact one you're going to put in your quiver, put a set screw through it, and you can shoot this into a target without it expanding. Man, the confidence going into the season, especially making like that 70-yard shot I did on that deer, I knew 100% without a doubt that was going to hit behind my pin, because I had been practicing at 70 yards with my broadheads going into it. And so there's no question in my mind when I'm drawing back on something. Same kind of thing with my elk. I had a really narrow window for a frontal shot at 30 yards on an elk this year. And while I was at full draw, I was like, I know I can make this shot. And so I just centered that pin just like I would on a target, ripped through it, and it hit right where I wanted it to, just because I knew 100% that it was going to do that. So
exactly. And yeah, that's funny that you bring that up, because that was something I was going to say is, I generally when I'm tuning my bow, making sure it's in tune once I slap a broadhead on, I'm usually using the iron will. I have a dedicated head that I use, the iron will wide, with bleeders. So like as much wind as you can get, wind drag. And if my arrow is flying true with that, I know my bow's tuned. And then, I go into, I can shoot other broadheads. And that's the one thing with the mechanicals that's hard to do with shooting them into targets, is usually it'll come with a practice head or two. It's not the exact same as shooting your actual broadhead into the target. And so that is really interesting to notice that you guys have done that. So it's just a really tiny set screw that locks those wings in so that they don't expand when it goes into the target, and you can shoot it over and over and over again and have your practice head that you use, and know that you're going to shoot good, instead of, you may still shoot again that wide broadhead and then trust that the mechanicals are going to fly good. But you have that little bit more confidence of knowing I've shot my actual broadhead. I know where it's going to hit. Just like you were saying on that elk. So that is a really cool feature. And then you've got so let's go through, I guess, from top to bottom, that head that you've got there. So you've got it's kind of sharpened, but not really, but it's a really good point there at the end. Is that sharpened at all, or talk to us a little bit about that there?
So this was kind of not a contention point, but there was a lot of questions about this tip. I don't know if you can see.
It's like a chisel
tip. So we found, I wish I had another one of our older models in here, but our older style kind of came to more of a 4-sided point is what it ended up being. And what we were seeing is it didn't add anything for penetration. And what it was doing is, because it came to such a narrow point, it had a more apt ability to roll on like hitting a rock or something like that. And it wouldn't be much. I mean, it would just slightly roll the tip.
Yeah.
And you could file it or whatever, but we were getting some warranty claims from that. And so our engineers came up with this kind of, I don't know if you can see that.
I guess, like, what's your warranty claim on that? When you, hey guys, I missed my deer and hit a rock. Can I get
there's guys all the time. Like, I hit a rib, or I punched a front shoulder and my blade's bent. It's like, I don't
That's
know
a little bit more acceptable than I missed.
Yeah. But they did 6 sides on this and put little, gosh, I'm trying to get that in the camera there.
Little grooves.
They put little grooves in there, and this has added to the durability. So we're able to shoot these into center blocks without the tip folding over. We're able to put them into plywood and then pull them back out without the tips being bent or, rolled over in the slightest. And then there is just a slight point on the end of that. It's a very minute flat point. And what that does is we did a really good YouTube video on this, but it's our stretch cut technology. So as this head's coming in, it's able to slightly recess that skin before these mechanical blades come in contact and start opening up. And so you actually, as that skin folds over and it cuts, you end up getting a bigger entrance cut on the initial wound. And then it turns into that 1.5-inch cut going through. So we're seeing, through like our ballistic gel tests and our hide tests, on impact, we're seeing closer to a 2-inch entrance wound on the mechanical side of that cut, and then the 1.5 exit wound. So it just gives you that more carnage on the initial punch, and then you're able to still pass through cleanly. So
yeah, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, anytime you can get a bigger hole, and it just goes back to like when you're shooting rifles, a lot of the time the animal's dying from shock, from the punch, the energy being dissipated throughout the chest cavity. And with arrows, it's hemorrhaging. So you want to do everything you can to hit the heart, the aorta, a big vein. I mean, it's crazy. There's a lot of times where people will hit an animal in the hind quarter, whether on accident or a bad shot or got nervous, whatever, and it dies because it hits that femoral artery, and they just bleed out in seconds. Don't aim for that, right? But like,
I have shot a deer accidentally back there. He spun on me, and it was the shortest blood trail I've had in a long time. It was like 15 yards, and he was down. So
yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, that's one thing that I really like about mechanicals. Now, I agree with everyone out there that's like, oh, fixed heads are the best. And look, it's again going back to, what are you confident with? And I know shooting my 70 or 80 pound bow at my 28-inch draw length and my, the accuracy that I've got, that I've established by the time hunting season comes around, I want the biggest cut possible. And so for me personally, that's why I'm confident in using mechanicals. Now, again, if you're more confident with a fixed head, shoot a fixed head. I'll just say that, like, that's fine. You don't have to shoot mechanical or the other. But for me, I want the most blood trail. I want the biggest internal damage possible. I want that 2 inches plus cut so that I have more likelihood of hitting an artery, a vein, the heart, both lungs, whatever it may be. And that's why I personally choose mechanicals over fixed. Now, I carry fixed broadheads, or a fixed broadhead generally, in my quiver for more of that if I need to get through some bone or something like that for a follow-up shot. But I love the blood trails that I get from mechanical heads. And hopefully this year I will get to see the Sevr in action on an animal. But it's, a lot of people that I know and trust, not just the people that are posting the highlights on, YouTube and social media, they really like these heads for that reason, especially the hybrid. Being able to have that bigger cut with the shorter ferrule, bigger cut, and on top of that, instead of just 2 blades, and this is my biggest thing with 2 blade heads, fixed or mechanical, is that the skin, you've got the skin and then you've got the muscle. And I always use this analogy. So you've got those 2 layers there, skin, muscle, and then you've got the stuff inside of that. But if you open a 2-inch cut like that and they're running, their skin and muscle is not fixed together. So it's doing a lot of this, right? But if you open up that triangle there with 3 or even 4, where it's a cube, it's a lot harder for the skin to cover up the blood trail. Now they still may bleed out internally. That's great. But the big thing for me is I want a good blood trail. I would prefer them obviously to die within sight, but that doesn't always happen. And so, you want the blood trail so that you can get to them quickly and either put a follow-up shot in them or at least recover your animal, whatever, doe, buck, elk, whatever it is,
No, and that's been the big thing that just for myself talking to customers all year with the hybrid is the reports of having the larger hemorrhage going through. So the initial is like, they're like, man, it looks like you took something that was, an inch and a half round and just punched it through there like a hole. And so that initial doesn't allow any of the blood to clot. Like you were saying with that was a really good example of having the skin fold back over. But if you have a hole going through there, it's not able to do that. And so you're still getting that blood trail, even if he does lay down in a weird position and maybe close that up. Because I've had that happen on a deer years ago where he closed up and I ended up losing the blood trail because he laid down for a minute and let it clot. So
brief moment here, interrupting the podcast to remind you of another amazing partner of the show, Grizzly Coolers. Grizzly Coolers, guys, they are fantastic. Well, they're more than just coolers. So Grizzly. If you're in the Midwest, East Coast, or even in the West Coast, if you have a place for a place to put a permanent stand, box blind, they have amazing blinds. They have troughs if you're looking to put up water. I don't know the technical name for that. They have so many other things like this cool, amazing hat right here. I love the black camo. And also coolers of all sizes. They have soft-sided coolers, which we've taken up to Alaska, the backpack cooler, which is fantastic. They have your coolers for your day-to-day use. And this right here, honestly, guys, I don't drink coffee or anything like that, but I put my energy drinks and cold drinks in this thing right here. It is fantastic. Look, slide, super smooth, and it is magnet. So super easy to clean right there. There we go. Got it to focus. All right. Now, guys, go check it out. They have amazing single walled cups. They have the double line cups. They have tumblers. If you're into the big tumblers, they have the gallon size monster jug. If you're looking to get a gallon in a day of your water. So all of that, guys, you can go and check out Grizzly with code RedBeard10. Save you some money, support the show, support amazing partners. USA made coolers. Fantastic. I trust my game meat. I trust my family's camping trips with them. And they're made for box step-ups too, guys. If you need a box step-up, go grab one. Check out Grizzly Coolers and Grizzly Drinkware and Grizzly everything. Go check it out, guys, with code RedBeard10. The link down below. Thank you so much for the support. Now let's get back to the podcast. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Allowing that to do more hemorrhage has definitely been shorter blood trails for sure.
Yeah, so. For sure. And on just on top of that with, the blood trail itself, because again, I don't doubt that a 2-blade fixed is going to make some damage internally, but again, if I can't follow the animal, then what good does a full pass through, which obviously we aim for as well, 2 holes better than 1, but what is that? What good is that if I can't find the animal? And I know people that have had the same issue, even with a 2-blade mechanical without bleeders or anything like that can happen at times as well. So, and then last but not least, we talked about this before we started recording, just the idea of heaven forbid the mechanical doesn't open. Now, I personally have not ever had that on any of the mechanicals I've shot, but you hear those stories about it. And I'd rather not have a little, field tip going through. Yeah. And with those blades, it's almost a 3/4 to an inch cut that's going to go through anyway.
So, I mean, you're getting that always. That's always going to be cutting right there. So
exactly.
And it's a fail-safe, like if I've seen it, that practice lock, I've seen it being left in before, and guys have shot animals with it. And twice this year, the hybrid ended up getting them a little bit of a blood trail to at least follow because they accidentally left the practice lock in. So PSA, make sure your practice lock isn't in before you hit the field. So
yeah. Yep, exactly. And that's definitely another thing. And then of course so if there was something to knock on the Sevr, in my opinion, the rubber band is something that a lot of people talk about.
Yeah.
So with that, with the rubber band, what, I guess, when someone brings that up to you, how do you address that? Because again,
Yeah.
sometimes they roll off, or depending on your quiver, you could accidentally jam it up in there if it's in the dark, and then the blades come out and cut the head, and then, oh crap, and then you have to have these rubber bands in your backpack. Like, how do you address that with customers or people that are on the fence of buying some and trying them out?
For sure. So there's two kind of tips I have for guys, because there's no way of getting around the O-ring right now, at
Mm-hmm.
least. But it is a very durable O-ring. I mean, I've been able to sit there and play with them and stretch them out to almost there before it starts to want to pop. So I mean, you have a little bit of a wiggle room. It's not the second it hits that it's going to pop it open, because we do cut just
Yeah.
little channels in the blades that allow
Okay.
that O-ring
Yep.
to sit in there without becoming under any stress of a blade. And so the two things I tell people to do: if your quiver is a foam quiver, I have the Hoyt one. I think it's just their like 6 arrow attached quiver. I actually went through with just a hot knife and lined up where the mechanical portion was going to go in, and just cut a small little slit, and they just slide right up in there now. The
Okay.
second thing I do is, on every single one of my arrows that are in my quiver that has a Sevr on it, I run an additional O-ring, because we do provide 2 O-rings with every broadhead. So you get 3 total. You get 1 on the head and then 2 extras. I take one of those and I run it all the way down my arrow shaft to the base of my fletchings. So if you ever are, hunting elk or something like that, and you're pushing through brush on a stalk and it accidentally gets stuck on a twig, or, you're pushing through something, it pops open, I'm not digging through my backpack. I'm able to just take one of those O-rings from underneath, slide it down my arrow
Mm.
shaft, throw it back over the broadhead, and then I don't have to take the broadhead off my arrow. I'm instantly reset within 5 seconds.
Okay.
So
Cool.
one of those little tips, and I mean, eventually we're working on ways to get away from the O-ring. It's a good system that we haven't seen a reason to get away from it quite yet with the other stuff we've come up with. So
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. No, I like it.
yeah.
That's awesome. What are some other, I guess, I can't really think of anything else. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I obviously prefer the hybrid over the standard. Some people prefer the standard. That's cool if you've been doing that for years.
Yep.
And it's not just because it's the newest, coolest thing. I genuinely, even with mechanicals, prefer more of that hybrid style, because I personally try and eliminate as many variables as possible. And again, if something does happen with the mechanical that gets hung up on something or whatever, then you've got that little extra cut in there rather than just a pinprick. I guess the pivoting
Yeah.
technology. Yeah. Talk
Yeah, I
about
was
that a
gonna
little
say
bit.
that was another thing I kind of wanted to talk about. So that's the actual patent that we bought from the Ulmers, was the lock and pivot. That's kind of the basis around this whole broadhead. And so every other mechanical, when they pop open, they lock out, and so they can't move back and forth at all. It's a stuck position where it's at. And
Which can cause deflections because it's
correct.
stuck. If it hits something that, yeah, one immovable object and another, the lighter weight one is going to deflect, right?
Yeah, it's just like a ricochet on a gun. So what you're seeing with some of those is, let's say this is a rib bone where my finger's at. Those other ones come through, they hit, and like you were just saying, they want to either deflect up, down. You have no real way of telling what way it's going to go. I mean, back when I was younger, first archery hunting, I saw a kid shoot a deer that deflected an arrow, and it pretty much just climbed down his rib skin. So between the rib bones and the hide, it just skinned down that and exited out and didn't leave a blood trail.
And it also, you got to think about energy too, and momentum. And I'm not a physicist or physicist by any means, but it is with an arrow, you want to continue that energy and momentum through the animal in a straight direction, because the moment that, even if you're parachuting, and you can talk about fletchings in a different thing here, but if you're parachuting, you're losing that energy. Or if you have any kind of wobble, at all, you're losing energy when you hit the animal. Whereas if you have a sharp broadhead that is cutting through that hide and going in a straight direction, or in this case, able to continue through the rib cage without deflecting, you're keeping that energy all the way through, which allows for pass-throughs, or at least to be able to get more penetration into the animal.
For sure. And that's where, the lock and pivot comes into play. So if you're entering into an animal, even at an extreme angle or something like that, and this comes in, let's say that's the rib bone. Well, you hit that, it doesn't take a lot of pressure for this to swing out of the way. And then as soon as you're past that bone, the pressure continues, it recorrects itself, and you continue on that 1.5 mechanical path. Yep. And so like there's a lot of guys that preach that, they'll clip a shoulder, and they're like, that would have been a terrible shot if it wasn't for the lock and pivot, because it was able to, they could see where it glanced, pivoted around, was able to keep going through, open back up, hit the heart, and then exit out the other side. And so that's where we get that whole kind of tagline of like Sevr straight through it, because there is no deviation of like where that broadhead's going to go. It's going to go through a straight path through that animal. So
yep. I like it. Trying to think of anything else here. What's the favorite head of all the employees at Sevr?
It sucks to say, but
since you're the one employee, what's your favorite? Well,
I mean, all the Easton guys shoot them too, but
yeah, I know that was the joke though. But yeah, I guess yeah, if you include Easton, what's the guys at Easton and the one employee of Sevr, what are your guys' favorite? What's the most shot head out of what's in the lineup available to the public right now?
1.5 hybrid this year was for sure, and then the 1.75 still lingered. I still had a few guys around here running the 1.75s. They call it the Goldilocks head. Yeah. Because it's not too small, it's not too big, it's just right. Mm-hmm. So for all the game here in Utah, that 1.75 is an awesome head. You're able to get good penetration, but still hold great accuracy, because the ferrule on the 1.75 is closer to the 1.5 than the 2-inch. So you're still getting a really confined package, but a bigger cut. So
no, I like it. Yeah. So that's definitely, I agree. When I saw that one come out, I was interested. And then of course the hybrid came out and I was like, all right, that one's got me, cause you always try and get it. It's cool because you definitely try and get a bigger cut with a smaller profile, if that makes sense. And you did that with the 1.5, and of course the 1.75, or sorry, the 1.5 hybrid, and then the 1.75 is definitely a good for distance. Being able to shoot that out the distance. If you want a 2-blade mechanical, that's cool. I guess, is there anything else about that head that we haven't talked about, or any other questions that have come up from customers or anything like that?
No, I mean, we feel like we've talked on it pretty much everything. The accuracy is still the same. I don't know if we talked about that before on the podcast, but shooting all the heads through the whole line, that's kind of the glory of it. I get calls all the time, well, what one's more accurate? And I tell them all of them. I've done tests that we have a facility here behind that we can shoot out to 100 yards. I've shot all the broadheads out to 80 and 90 yards. And as good as I can shoot, I mean, I'm throwing them in a group like that, and I can't tell what's what. If what's a field point, what's a 1.75, or what's a hybrid. So that's kind of the nice part, is you don't really have to get stuck on one. You can kind of play with the whole series. So like I personally, when I'm out in the woods, like I was just on a coos hunt, I had a 1.5 for those like 120, 130 yard shots if I ever had to. Those coos hunts are a little difficult. And then I had the 1.5 hybrids for those like 100 yards and in shots. So I kind of mixed and matched on that, and I knew where they were at for the different applications. So
gotcha. No, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, I think that's it. I guess so if you guys out there listening have seen my buddy Jared over there, I think it's Peaked Out Outdoors or Peak Out Adventures. Yeah. He does really good videography work. Really awesome dude, stud of a human being, and loves his family. Great dad, all of those things. And him and Braxton have started or restarted the Bow Nerds podcast. Both of those guys are awesome dudes, just down to earth, and they both shoot Sevrs. There was something that, obviously Jared was trying to tease a little bit here. So what can you say for the public that they should look forward to? Should they, I guess, is something going to be available before hunting season that they should look forward to?
Yes. So we're shooting for a total archery challenge launch sometime in May or June. We're still deciding on where we want to release it, but all I can say is it's our biggest cut head by about 50%. So whatever our biggest cut in the lineup is now, add 50% to that, and that's about what that head overall cut's going to be. So that's about all I can give right now. But
so they're coming out with the new Sevr helicopter. It's going to be the turkey head of the year. It's a 3-inch. Yeah, exactly. It actually throws blades as it's going towards the animal. It's like slinging ninja blades. Yeah, that's exactly. Or scatter shot, or the exploding head like off of Rambo, you get the exploding broadhead. That would be pretty interesting.
We're bringing it back.
I'd hate to clean that animal with all the shrapnel inside of it, but that would not be fun.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But no, Jared, I think his video is going to really show the carnage of that head. When I was talking to him on the phone afterwards, he was saying it was pumping blood out as it was jumping. And so I'm excited to see the video, and I'm excited for everybody else to see what's coming. So it's going to be a gnarly year.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, sweet. Well, I guess, is there anything else do you guys sell in dealerships at all? Is that something that you're looking to do eventually, or is it only direct to consumer?
So for right now, it's only direct to consumer. Coming from Shields and having that retail background for 10 years, I understand the importance of a retail shop. And so our goal is probably in the next 2 to 3 years, we just got to make the roadmap for that. We're planning on releasing to dealers, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years.
Sweet.
But we'll see. I mean, we're killing it on direct to consumer right now. So it's like, if it ain't broke, why try something else? But I just know to get to the goal that I have, which is essentially making Sevr how Rage was, where it's a household name for mechanical broadheads. That's where I want to be. And I know with the shop's help, we can get there. So.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's definitely a sticking point. If you have a good shop, there's a lot of people that go online for their stuff nowadays. But if you have a good shop, it can be hard to steer away from their recommendations and what they've got in there, because you want to trust the guys in the shop too. And that's why I ask, and also people want to get their hands on the broadhead, see them, feel them, touch them, probably not taste them before they choose to shoot them. And so I'm sure you have people that call and ask about that. Like if they want to get one or two, is that a possibility for them to order onesie twosies just to get their hands on?
I was going to say, that's the other kind of cool part, is where all of our heads are sold individually. So you can actually kind of pick and choose how many you want to get. And so I always tell people, like, I remember working at the shop, we'd get a new broadhead in and I'd have to buy a 3-pack. And then I would go shoot it, either probably hate it or like it. But if I hated it, then I would have 2 extras sitting around. So I've got a archery box at home that's just got, I can't tell you how many broadheads inside of it from different manufacturers that I played with and stuff. But if any of your viewers or listeners want to try one, use code SEVR free ship. So anything over $50 is usually free shipping. But if you want to just pick up one head, there's $16.99 for the 2 blades, $19.99 for the 4-blade hybrids. But use code SEVR free ship and you get free shipping on that. So if you want to try one, that's your route to try one pretty easy. Yeah.
And that's really not bad, because if you think about it, like you get even what I'd consider budget, but not so budget, you can't trust them, right? So like, for example, the go-to, the one that I even started with, the Q80 Exodus, I think for 3, it's coming in at $45 to $50, right? Yep. And I wouldn't go much more budget than that personally, because that's when you start having bad material and all this other stuff. I think that's a good starting broadhead that a lot of people will know. That's $15 a broadhead. So you guys really, for titanium and being able to pick and choose if you want one of each of the lineup and be able to shoot them and figure out what you want, $16 to $20 is really not that big of a stretch compared to the more budget friendly, if you want to consider it that, broadheads that you can pick up at a shop. So, if people out there are listening, obviously I'm a firm believer in supporting your bow shops, because without them, archery won't be around much longer, to be honest with you. And so obviously supporting them, but if this is something that you are interested in, like I said, Sevr free ship. So it's SEVR. Don't put the extra E in there. It's SEVR free ship. And you can check out, grab 3 broadheads and you're at the point where you get free shipping.
Or just grab one if you want. And you're good to go. So, and that's how I always tell people that is, like, try one. That's how I kind of got introduced to Sevr, was back in 2018. I went to Total Archery Challenge here in Utah. Clint and Isaac were running the Sevr booth at the time. Isaac Elman. And
he's worked for just about every company in the industry at this point.
I know. He's a good guy. But yeah, he's been around the block a few times for sure.
Yeah.
But he just gave me one, and he's like, "Here, just go try it." Because I was asking him about dealer programs, and like, just go try it, see how you like it. And I actually shot my first whitetail in Missouri that year with that head, because I went and put it in practice lock, shot it out to 60, 70 yards, and I was like, this thing shoots pretty dang good. and ended up throwing it on and shot my first deer in 2018 with one. So it's
Sweet.
crazy what one will do to somebody. So
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
but,
Cool. Well, anything else, Casey, that you wanted to bring up?
nope, that should be it. I guess if you guys are at Western Hunt Expo, we'll be there. We'll be running some pretty killer show specials. So if you're wanting to pick them up or even play with them, we'll have the full lineup there, and as well as product to sell. And then I'll be at 7 of the Total Archery Challenges this year. So if you're
Wow.
at any of them that we're going to be at, come say hi, and I'll hook you guys up with some broadheads. So
You got a busy spring and summer, man.
oh yeah, it's gonna be fun. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Well, on that note, what's your energy drink of choice? No, I'm kidding.
no, I'll tell you right now, it's the strawberry Monster Zero. So I drink one of those a day.
We need to. I need to swing by and get you a first Phorm one.
Okay.
It'll change your mind.
I like the first Phorm jerky sticks and stuff like that. So I imagine
there you go.
Their energy drinks are good. So
yes, 100%, 100%. But yeah, cool. Well, guys, you heard it here. Go pick one up, test it out if that's something that you've been looking at. If you're interested in a 2-blade or a hybrid style mechanical, I can personally attest to the fact that they're great quality. They fly great, and then hopefully eventually I'll be able to say what they do to an animal. I know what they do to squirrels. The squirrel was non-existent after that one went through them, and that was after the squirrel had been chirping his guts out, and I just was like, all right, I'm done. There's no deer around here. I'm done, man.
sending it.
Yeah, exactly. Send it. But sweet. Cool. Well, I appreciate it, Casey. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Guys out there listening, like I always say, get out, live your life, and love it. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Casey is an awesome individual, a hustler, absolutely loves, hustler in a good sense of the word, not trying to sell you snake oil, but a good sense of the word, as in he is at events. He is showing people how passionate he is about the projects that Sevr is working on. I'm really excited to get the new things that they're working on in my hands and test them out this year as well. And of course, that hybrid 1.5 to be able to finally use that on an animal this year. So thank you guys so much again for the support, for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the conversation. If you're following along on Spotify or Apple, leave a comment that you can now do on Spotify, which is awesome, and leave a review. If you can leave a review, again, I'm reading reviews every single week and letting you know that I appreciate you by sending out swag to one lucky person every single week as I read your review here on the podcast. Now, don't forget, as well as if you are in the market for gear, whether it be broadheads, whether it be clothing, whether it be whatever it is that you're looking for, check out the links down below. Save some money, support me and my partners, as well as getting the best price possible on the best gear on the market. That's what I want to get back to you guys. Thank you so much for the support. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. Now let's get into this week's review. I'm going to pick this one from, actually, Spotify's weird, guys. It doesn't allow me to read reviews. You basically leave a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star. Please don't leave any of those. If you have a problem, shoot me an email. No, I'm just kidding. If you genuinely feel that way, leave the review. I do appreciate the 5-star reviews, of course, but I also want feedback from you guys. So let's see if I can. Yeah, I'm not able to pull up reviews there. So we're going to pull this one from Apple. Just going to kind of scroll through here. Let's see. We've got, okay, awesome. So this one is from Dirt Rider. Dirt, D-I-R-T, Rider, R-I-D-D-R. This says, just a good, solid podcast with great information. Not disappointed at all. Great subjects that help in all aspects of life. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. So, Dirt Rider, reach out to me. I'll get you your swag or your product or whatever I'm sending out this week, and you're going to get that in the mail. Reach out to my email. It is redbeardoutdoors1@gmail.com, and we'll get you hooked up. For everyone else, leave that review over on Apple and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I appreciate your support. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.